Coming up on 60 Minutes.
I'm burying my son, and I don't know why.
Australia's hospital hell.
It was so preventable.
Deadly failures inside privately run emergency departments.
Is Healthscope in a position to actually run emergency departments in Australia?
Enough is enough.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Australia has one of the best healthcare systems in the world. If you get sick or injured and need emergency care, you expect to be in safe hands in most hospitals. But not all of them, and especially not for some patients who ended up in facilities run by Healthscope. It's a private company that operates 38 hospitals and emergency departments around the country, but has a growing list of shameful failings that have led to needless patient deaths. One was 2-year-old Joe Massa, who died after waiting hours for care. Tonight, on assignment for 60 Minutes, Nine's Christina Hearn reveals the equally terrible case of Melbourne teenager James Sindos, who, like Joe, would likely be alive today if he hadn't put his trust in Healthscope.
Piano was James Sindos's passion, and the Melbourne schoolboy loved nothing more than playing it for his family.
If he could carry it on his back, he would, literally.
And what was it like hearing him play?
Oh, it was beautiful, really beautiful.
His piano hasn't been touched since 2021. Since the day the 17-year-old went to Holmes Glen Hospital in Melbourne for treatment for anaphylaxis. An over-the-counter medication would have cured him, but a series of failures at the hospital meant James didn't get it in time. Now, he's never coming home.
I'm burying my son, and I don't really know what happened. I've got a kid that walks into an ambulance, says to me, "Dad, I'm fine," and I'm burying him. And I don't know why.
James's parents, Harry and Vanita, have waited almost 4 years to speak publicly about his death, while the coroner has been investigating. But now they want every Australian to understand the dangers of emergency departments run by a private company called Healthscope. And they're not alone.
So our children go to these departments dying for help, and they die.
The Moylan and the Massa families have also lost children because of terrible blunders at Healthscope facilities. In 2017, Annie Moylan died after a failure to diagnose sepsis at Holmes Glen. And last September, Joe Massa waited almost 3 hours for help at Northern Beaches Hospital in Sydney. A delay that cost him his young life.
It wasn't just one thing, it was every single touch point along the way was a failing.
Healthscope is the second biggest commercial operator of hospitals in Australia. It's facing serious financial troubles, and a new CEO, Tino Lespina, has been brought in to try to fix the mess.
Christina Hearn from 60 Minutes.
He's the man grieving families across the country have a question for. Can a private company operating for profit be trusted to deliver emergency care?
Do you think that these families deserve answers as to how they've died in emergency departments run by Healthscope?
It was the middle of Melbourne's COVID lockdowns in 2021 when James Sindos rang his dad from school to say he wasn't feeling well. Harry took him for a test and then drove him home. James used Deliveroo to order a burrito bowl for lunch. But he didn't realise the cheese sauce in it was actually vegan and made of cashews, a nut he was allergic to. stomach pain and tingling lips came on quickly, so Harry called 000.
While I was speaking to the ambulance, James calls the restaurant. He said, "What was in the sauce?" And then I heard him say, "Cashews."
When the paramedics arrived, they gave James 2 shots of adrenaline before deciding to transfer him to Healthscope's Holmesglen Hospital for observation. Harry, when did things go wrong?
I mean, when you say to me what went wrong, what went wrong is that we took him to Holmesglen Hospital. That's what went wrong.
When Harry met the ambulance in the driveway, he thought he'd be able to follow his son straight inside. But it wasn't that simple, with the hospital then operating under strict COVID protocols.
And that made me feel like a burden, Christine. I felt like a burden. I said to James, "Are you okay if I leave? I go home, I'll just finish my lunch and I'll come straight back." He goes, "Yeah, Dad, I'm okay."
When you left him, he was fine.
Christine, there was nothing wrong with him when I left him.
You didn't know that was the last time you'd see him?
100%, Christine.
When James was being wheeled away from his dad, he developed a wheeze. That was a sign that the adrenaline was wearing off and he needed another shot immediately. But the wheeze was not recorded during the handover from the paramedic to the triage nurse. And that was a catastrophic error.
James, at that point of triage, could have and should have gotten immediate adrenaline. That's the drug that is the baseline standard of care for anybody that's having an anaphylactic reaction. He did not get that. We've now gotten the statement of claim together. We've gotten that back from
Lawyer Sherry Leiby represented the Sindos family at the inquest into James's death. They heard James's condition rapidly deteriorated after he was admitted to Holmesglen. But he was still not given adrenaline because his symptoms were dismissed as asthma and anxiety. So you've got someone coming in after having anaphylaxis.
That's right.
They're wheezing, they're struggling to breathe, and the doctors think it's anxiety? How can that be?
Well, that's what we want to know. That's some of the answers that the family wants, needs, and deserves.
At about 4:10 p.m, not long after James arrived, Harry received a call from the hospital to pay the bill. He had no idea it was around that time James started to go into cardiac arrest. And Harry wasn't told that critical information until he called again, 45 minutes later.
They said, "Your son is very sick. Your son is very sick." I said, "What? That's impossible. I have just left him." And I jumped in my car and I rang the hospital again and spoke to a doctor. He said his heart has stopped. And I remember I was just going, no.
And you have to tell your wife, Anita, how did you do that?
They asked me to, you should ring up the mother. I said, "Tell him what? Tell her what? Go in there and save my son."
Holmesglen finally gave James adrenaline, 22 doses intravenously, while they tried to revive him. But he suffered a catastrophic brain injury. He was moved to the Alfred Hospital and placed on life support. But he couldn't be saved. His parents, along with his 3 big sisters, Christina, Elpida and Georgia, were called to his bedside.
To hear that he's not here with us anymore was, I'm not kidding you, a nightmare that you just keep going in and out of. And a nightmare that never stops till today.
The fact that it was so sudden and that James was perfectly fine, and then one day he's gone and there's an empty hallway and there's no piano playing and there's no laughing or screaming or whatever the things that make you feel like there is life in the house. So that's horrific.
James should have celebrated his 21st birthday last October. Instead, his family was at the inquest into his death, where they heard damning testimony from medical experts. Most critical of all, that with more timely treatment, James would not have died.
I'm angry at the hospital. I'm angry at the fact that he didn't get to live his life. And I'm angry that he was only 17 and this happened to him. I'm just angry at so many things. And I guess like the part about it that I'm so angry about is that this wasn't meant to happen. You know? It was so preventable. It was so preventable.
When you now have all the evidence there, and it appears that if James got an adrenaline shot as soon as he had that wheeze, that he'd be alive today.
100%.
How frustrating is that as parents that something so simple could have saved his life?
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the...
Because we're not talking about
No.
a complex medical treatment here.
No.
It's adrenaline.
It's adrenaline, Christine, and the simplicity and the devastation of not doing that, it's gut-wrenching. It's torn us.
Despite the medical failures on that day, Harry still carries the burden of not being by his son's bedside from the moment he arrived at Holmesglen.
People say to me, don't feel guilty, Harry. I don't know if I would have changed the outcome. I can tell you what, I wouldn't have ignored him. And they need to own it. They need to come clean on it. For James' sake, for my family's sake, for the community's sake, and for their own sake.
But the pain continued for the Sindos family when a witness, another patient on that terrible day, revealed a shocking reality the hospital had tried to keep a secret.
And while you were waiting for your scan results, what did you hear?
The story Zoran is about to tell might be an indication of just how inadequate privately run emergency departments can be. He was there when teenager James Sindos was dying at Healthscope's Holmesglen Hospital in Melbourne in 2021.
Zoran, why are you speaking out?
Look, it's probably burning me a little bit because I was there and the boy's family wasn't there. So by me explaining all this, potentially they're going to understand exactly what happened. Unfortunately, it's not a good story to tell, but potentially, you know, the hospital will get better and it won't happen to another, you know, boy or child or whatever, or a person or whatever it may be.
James was suffering from anaphylaxis after accidentally eating a sauce made of cashews. All he needed was adrenaline, but he didn't get it in time. Around a month after James died, Zoran heard about it in the media and realised he'd been a witness to the schoolboy's final moments at Holmesglen. Zoran was also in the emergency department that day after being in a minor car accident.
And while you were waiting for your scan results, what did you hear?
I heard a person and they were saying, I can't breathe. And it was exactly like, I can't breathe. And they said it many times, more than a dozen times. I can't breathe, you know, constantly. And the nurse had gone in there and didn't seem to be taking it serious. And then eventually the doctor came in and he had said to this person that was constantly saying, I can't breathe, sounds like you're breathing fine to me. And then the doctor left at that time.
And what did you hear this patient say? Did he say anything else apart from, I can't breathe?
Oh, I'm going to die. I can't breathe, I'm going to die.
And the doctor has said, it looks like you're breathing fine to me.
Correct, yes.
As it turns out, James had been triaged as a lower risk patient. By the hospital's own admission, that was wrong. It meant he wasn't placed in a resuscitation bay where doctors would have had at the ready everything they needed to revive him. Zoran will never forget what he heard next.
Well, then the doctor seemed to have left, and potentially within 30 seconds, maybe within 30, 40 seconds, I think the patient obviously stopped breathing or couldn't handle it anymore and jumped off the bed or landed on the ground, and all of a sudden there was a huge noise. All the doctors and nurses ran in, what I could hear, and obviously took it serious because the person was dying or not breathing, and then it just chaotic for maybe over an hour, trying to save the person.
What could you hear? Did it sound like they had things under control?
No. So it was a huge panic. Everyone was running around. They were definitely trying their best, but it was probably too little too late. They were running around. They were coming in my room. They were looking for things. They were running down the corridor. They were arguing. It was just chaotic, unorganised.
It was difficult for James's mum and dad, Harry and Vanita, to learn their son's cries for help weren't taken seriously. But they're grateful Zoran came forward to police and gave a statement ahead of the inquest into James's death, especially because they've struggled to get answers from Holmesglen.
Initially, the hospital told James's parents he was given adrenaline at 4 p.m. But that time can't be right because under oath at the inquest, the nurse who triaged James said he wasn't even in his hospital bed by then. Sadly, whatever the time was, it was far too late for James.
What they should have said is, we are sorry. This shouldn't have happened. James should still be alive. We screwed up bad, and we're going to work out why, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. They had to be honest with us, and that's all that families like us want. Is
Honesty.
Honesty.
Do you believe that if you had taken James even to a chemist, that he might be alive?
Yes. Oh, well, he was at school that day, right? He was in the sick bay. He was safer there.
Safer in the sick bay at school?
100%, because what they would have done...
Than an emergency department in Melbourne?
Yes, in my opinion, because every carer, especially teachers, people who have to do a first aid course, know that the first line of defence is adrenaline, adrenaline, adrenaline. He's at a hospital. They've got adrenaline, haven't they? Why didn't they do it?
So it's not only frustrating, but it's tragic and traumatic to try and come to terms with the fact that first aid wasn't actioned in an emergency hospital.
Around the time of James's death, Holmesglen claimed on their website one of their head emergency doctors was a specialist. The problem, though, is he is not. It takes 5 years of training to become an emergency specialist, and falsely advertising is a criminal offence. When I contacted the regulator AHPRA, they thanked me for bringing it to their attention but said they couldn't comment. Sometime later, Holmesglen quietly changed the website from specialties to areas of practice.
Like the Sindos family, Danny and Eloise Massa have paid a devastating price for inexcusable medical blunders. Their 2-year-old little boy, Joe, died last September after waiting almost 3 hours for help at Northern Beaches Hospital in Sydney. By the time Joe was seen, he couldn't be saved.
When you rock up to a hospital, in 2025, you don't expect that you're going to be dismissed, going to be left ignored, and eventually, in our tragic circumstances, it's just not good enough.
Northern Beaches provides both public and private beds, but it's operated by Healthscope, the same company that runs Holmesglen.
Not one more life can be lost, and we need to make change.
Danny, do you think Healthscope should be running emergency departments in Australia? Do you think they're equipped to do so?
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. We aren't, an isolated case through the care of Healthscope in an emergency department. It is just it makes my blood boil.
Oh, it's nice to meet you both.
If anyone knows what the Massas are going through, it's the Moylans.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's been, yeah.
Marg and Brian lost their pregnant daughter Annie in 2017 to sepsis after she was misdiagnosed at Holmesglen Emergency Department.
It haunts us. It absolutely haunts us.
In all 3 cases, it was left to the heartbroken parents to piece together for themselves how and why their children died. The hospitals weren't just scant on detail. After James and Joe's deaths, they also lost evidence. Holmesglen and Northern Beaches were asked repeatedly to store CCTV. That would have been crucial in establishing a timeline. But the critical vision was not saved.
Here we are on a journey of uncovering and unpacking the dishonesty of what is happening at Healthscope at the Northern Beaches Hospital. And it's a tragedy that we as parents have to do this.
But Eloise, it shouldn't be up to you as parents. You shouldn't have to uncover what went on.
But we do.
I feel shattered and angry at the interactions with Healthscope, and there's just a cloak of darkness with how they're acting, and it's shocking.
Tino, is Healthscope in a position to actually run emergency departments in Australia?
Coming up, Healthscope's CEO, Tino Lespina.
Have you got anything to say to these families, Tino?
This was a place once filled with joy for the Sindos family.
I was going, mate, you know, I want some too.
It was James's favourite restaurant.
We are remembering him, we're honouring him.
It's the first time they've come back here since the schoolboy's tragic death in 2021.
We don't have James's energy in the house anymore. And that's the biggest hole that you can think of.
James, a talented pianist, was taken from them at just 17. After he went to Holmesglen Emergency Department in Melbourne, suffering from anaphylaxis, and didn't get life-saving medication in time.
This is about the system. That day, they need to come clean and tell us why they did not care for James. Why did they not give him treatment?
It's the same question the parents of Annie Moylan and Joe Massa need answered. Like James, Annie and Joe died in emergency departments run by Healthscope. It's the second biggest private hospital operator in Australia, but it's owned by a Canadian asset manager, Brookfield.
You look at the processes, you start to unpack the policies. They are inadequate. They are failing. And what does it come down to? Cost. Why is a Canadian hedge fund managing the healthcare of our citizens in New South Wales and in Victoria and indeed across Australia? Enough is enough.
There are even more concerns for patient care when you look at Healthscope's books. Mike Smith, the health editor of the Australian Financial Review, says the company itself is in desperate need of a lifeline.
Healthscope's got $1.6 billion worth of debt. The problem is COVID hit, and of course all the elective surgery dried up. I mean, no one went to hospital for 2 years. So private hospitals really struggled, started making losses. And also Healthscope, they used to own a lot of properties. They sold their properties to some other companies and they now lease them back.
So it's a problem on a problem on a problem.
That's right. Yeah, it's almost the perfect storm. You know, this is a company that at the moment is struggling to pay its rent, struggling to pay some of its bills, and its sort of future viability is now under a cloud.
It's up to Healthscope CEO Tino Lespina to work out the path forward.
Christine Ahern from 60 Minutes. We just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about Healthscope.
He declined our request for an interview, but he couldn't dodge our questions on his way to work in Melbourne CBD.
Tino, is Healthscope in a position to actually run emergency departments in Australia?
That the boss had absolutely nothing to say was disappointing, but perhaps also unsurprising.
Tino, do you know the name James Sindos? I know, Tino, you might not want to speak to me, and we've asked repeatedly for an interview, but these families really want answers.
Parents who have lost children say the company's failure to communicate openly and honestly is exactly what's made it so hard for them to grieve.
We've got the Sindos family, the Massa family, the Moylan family. Do you think that these families deserve answers as to how they've died in emergency departments run by Healthscope?
It's a fight worth having. Joe deserves it. And it's something that needs to be done.
We celebrate Joe, and we will never stop celebrating Joe. And talking.
And the Massas have already achieved a lot. Last week, just 2 days after we caught up with Healthscope's boss, he made a huge announcement. The company is in talks to walk away from Northern Beaches Hospital and hand it back to the New South Wales government. It came after Joe's Law was introduced last month to stop any future privatisation of the state's emergency departments. There'll also be a parliamentary inquiry to make sure the mistakes that led to Joe's death are never made again.
It's a position that you didn't ever want to find yourself in, but you are creating change for other people. Does that create some kind of light in what is a very, very dark situation?
It does. Whilst people might feel sorry for Elle and I, we are the ones that are lucky. We get to live. Joe doesn't get to live. So to fight the good fight for Joe and for others is
why you're doing it.
Is why we're doing it. That's right, yeah.
It's the same hope that drives Harry and Vanita Sindos as they wait for the coroner's findings about their son's death. James never got to graduate from Melbourne's Brighton Grammar School. A concert each year is held in his honour to ensure he's never forgotten. What do you think James is saying to you now?
Mum, keep going, Mum. Be my voice. I'm in a position where I need to speak for James because he can't speak for himself because they've buried him in the ground. James is in the ground as we speak. He's not here. That is not right.
As you just saw, Healthscope's CEO was lost for words when approached by Christine Ahern. Following that encounter, however, the company released a statement, which you can read on our website. Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.